Thank you so much for joining me this evening. As folks are coming into the live stream, I just want to say happy Tuesday to you. It is Tuesday, January 12th, and we're going to get started here. As promised, we were talking about getting out of the Lost Book of Enki a little bit and getting into some Bible study. I haven't uploaded the latest Bible study, but we're going to have a discussion this evening over some of the things that I was kind of looking over. So I'm going to give a little bit of time for some folks to get in here, and hopefully we'll have a good session tonight. Awesome. Hello, Miss Yates. Welcome, welcome. Let me see. Here we go. Uh-oh. Here we go. How are you doing today, dear? I hope your week is going so far so good, hopefully. Hey, Akasha's Journey, welcome, welcome. Good evening to you as well. How's you doing? Uh-oh. Hey, Paul Snowcloud, welcome. Hey, Lisa Hitch, welcome. Welcome, welcome, everyone. I hope everyone's having a beautiful Tuesday here. I thought I was going to get further into some of Von Daniken's work this week. You say you glad you? I'm glad you called me live too. I thought I was going to get into Von Daniken's work this week, but actually, what got my attention, I don't know. I was doing a little bit of reading. I was checking something in Genesis. These are some glasses I've had for a long time. I just had not been wearing them because they're a bit heavy, and I've been trying to stretch them out a little bit so they're not as heavy on my face. But I'm gonna try to wear them. The red ones I wanted to wear are a little bit warped because I have a bad habit of falling asleep with glasses in the bed, and yeah, I lay on them and get them all warped. So I decided to do something different today. They're just reading glasses though, so you liable to see me with some of anything on. I'm grateful though that I don't need a super expensive prescription. That reading glasses will get it. So yeah. But y'all, we have, like I said, we've been in the Lost Book of Enki for the longest. Thank you, Akasha's Journey. We have been in the Book of Enki for the longest, and some folks had asked me to go back into the Bible, and I am going to upload those. But I was kind of just flipping through Genesis a little bit past the. Everybody goes to Genesis and wants to go immediately to the Garden of Eden story and all the rest of that. And the thing that got my attention, and it's not like you don't know these things, but you forget them and then you get reminded of them again. And we hear the story of Abraham and then his son Isaac and then Isaac's son Jacob. Well, Jacob and Esau and that story. And a lot of folks don't really understand, well, because the preacher don't give us the full ramification of the Esau and Jacob story. But one of the big takeaways for me out of the Esau and Jacob story is number one, that in my opinion, is the beginning of Yeshua's true lineage because it is said that Yeshua was an Edomite, meaning he was a descendant of Esau. And like I said, the Edomites did not rock with Yahweh at all. But Jacob's descendants did. And I find that kind of interesting because when you start again, it was put upon me to further examine the nature of those who chose to serve Yahweh so we could kind of determine for ourselves. We're given at face value that the God of the Bible is the God that we're supposed to be worshiping, period, if you subscribe to Christianity or Judaism, either one. And the Muslims don't really want to acknowledge that they're worshiping this God, but genuinely they are because they are the descendants of Ishmael, who was Abraham's firstborn son by his concubine Hagar. Or she was Sarah's servant girl, but however it went, That is Abraham's firstborn was Ishmael, and the scriptures say he was a wild beast of a man. But the Islamic nation comes from Ishmael's line, and the Jews come from Jacob's line. And like I say, at the end of the day, it leaves us to wonder about the Edomites. They were Jews too by birth. All of them were considered Jews. They were all descendants of Abraham because he was the one that was promised that his name, well, truthfully, it was Sarah that was promised that out of her a mighty nation was going to come. And Abraham took credit for that child, even though Genesis 18 says that the Lord came to Sarah and did to her as he had promised. That was the one time Yahweh broke his distaste of humans to actually impregnate a human. Yeah, not Enki. Enki had children all over the place. Genesis chapter 5 is crawling with Enki's children. But in the Bible, you don't meet Yahweh, as far as we can tell, only had one human offspring, and that is Sarah's son. And hold on. Yeah, Isaac. Let me see. I'm going to get to the chapter. Wait a minute. It's in, excuse me. Yeah. Okay. In Genesis chapter 18, we've talked about that before. That's when the one time in the Bible, Yahweh has said nobody could see his face and yet live. And to this day, religion has us believing that it's because his grandeur is so great that the energy of seeing Yahweh will this cause us to poof, explode. That's the way we're taught that as far as religion, because that's what I thought. The glory of the Lord is so extreme that no person, no human can actually visually see it without falling dead. That's the way they teach it to us. That is not true. Genesis chapter 18 says, and the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre, appeared to him. He appeared to Abraham. The Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the earth and said, O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree while I bring a morsel of bread that you may refresh yourselves. And after that, you may pass on, since you have come to your servant. So they said, do as you have said. And it continues on. Excuse me. He said, you say this respectfully, you were raised Catholic and then became an adult and strayed away from it. You're 53 and pray to God, but you have no clue what Bible to read or where to start. Honey, it don't really matter. I am currently reading from the English Standard Version. And now truthfully, I do want to get a I can't think of the Bible. It was one that I think it was the one that either Van Daniken or Sitchin suggested. No, it was Jordan Maxwell said that he liked it. It's called I put it in my cart in Amazon too, because it's only like $35 in Amazon. But it basically kind of looked with all of the translations, but for real, all of them have been manipulated, so it really doesn't matter. I don't particularly care for the King James Version because the English in the King James Version is very outdated. There are some very deliberate manipulations and mistranslations in the King James Version because they don't even call it a translation, it's a version. And quite honestly, King James was not a Christian, and he dabbled in demonology in a way that I just really don't care for the King James Version. I don't speak Latin, so I don't use the Vulgate. I don't use the Septuagint or any of those. I'm reading from the English Standard, so I hope that's okay. Paul, it's interesting because, oh yeah, I will make it subscribers only because we do want. Thank you for saying that because we don't want foolishness up in here. We get ready to have a very serious conversation, so I am going to make it subscribers only. Anyone can watch if they choose to, but we're going to comment. You will have to be a subscriber for at least 10 minutes. So hopefully you'll get an opportunity to hear what we talk about before you jump in with the proselytizing. Let me see. Hello, Jamaica Odom. Yeah. Let me see. Paul, but I mentioned that to someone the other day. It's not only like the elite, the wealthy, they're not that pressed about religion, period. They show up for the christenings or the inaugurations. They show up on Easter Sunday, on Christmas Day, or whatever when there's a photo op for it. But they're not bent on religion like that. Religion is for poor folks. It's to subjugate the poor folks, the masses. Always has been. The elite ain't never been about religion like that because they know it's a lie. It's poor folks that get all bent about it and to kill you and everybody else about it. I don't know if I can get off of this, Kai. If I leave off of this, it's probably going to shut me out of. Let me see if I got Amazon on this one. I think I put it in there. I might have Amazon on my tablet because it's gonna bother me now. I think it starts with a C, but I can't remember for sure. Hold on. Oh Lord, I gotta charge my tablet too because it's about to go off. Yeah, I don't have Amazon loaded on my tablet right now because I can't remember. I'll remember next. I'll remember for next time, y'all. I am so sorry about that, but I may even like upload the version to the community tab if anybody's interested in it. I don't have an affiliate link or anything set up for it, but if you're interested in knowing which one, because I mean Jordan Maxwell was on his stuff, so if he said that was a pretty good translation to go with, I'll believe him. You hear so many different versions of the Bible and different opinions of them. Yeah. Well, what I'm gonna do with this one, as far as I've been able to tell, I grew up with the New World Translation. I am very familiar with the King James version as well, and this seems to be very um, compatible with all of those versions. In fact, I got a couple different translations back there. I just use this one because the English is easier to understand. Because truthfully, let's step back away from religion for a minute because religion has us believing that we've got to find the right one and there's only one truth and there's only one God. We're not looking at the scriptures that way. And when I say this is a Bible study, Lisa, this is a different kind of Bible study because for once, we're not going to defer to the priests and the pastors and the reverends. We're going to read the scriptures for what it actually says and then we can figure out ourselves because we don't need them to. That's been a large part of what has led humanity astray because we read something and they go, oh no, 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 it says that, but that ain't really what it means. And then they start interpreting it away to try to make us believe something that it doesn't say. We're gonna look at what it actually says. Hey Marsha Brijo, welcome. And that was one of the things that when I started looking at Genesis that I was interested in because I wanted to know the true nature of Yahweh because they tell you God is love, but most of the stuff mentioned in this Bible is not very loving. So I wanted to go through and read it again for myself to understand the true nature of Yahweh. But then it also occurred to me the only reason we worship Yahweh is because our ancestors worshiped Yahweh. So I wanted to look in the scriptures and read it to see if I could glean or ascertain, if you will, the true natures of our ancestors that chose to worship Yahweh. Because that's the reason we worship Yahweh, because Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Moses chose to worship Yahweh. That's the reason we worship him today. We will go through the book of Thomas eventually, Paul. I don't have it in print right now. If I can find a version online that gives me the text read along, then I'll do it on the channel. Other than that, I'm gonna have to wait until my ends get right and I start buying books again and actually buy a version of the Apocrypha with the Gospel of Thomas in it. But I most certainly intend to. I just hadn't bought any more books because I still got like 14 of Sitchin's books that I'm supposed to go through. So, and now, like I said, I want Maxwell's books and Von Daniken's books as well as Paul Wallace's books. So it's just a lot. It's a lot. And we probably won't go through the whole series. I got to read them and then I'll probably filter them down to the Crib Notes version and talk about them a little bit, go through it so it doesn't take us as long to get through it as a group. But it's a lot. Yeah, more months than money. But I know that's fixing to change, so I'm not stressing it. I wasn't stripping myself down to the wire to buy books that I don't even have the time or energy to read right now. But yeah, you said, but you said the Book of Thomas is symbolic, but the whole Book of Thomas I don't think is symbolic because I hear Greg Braden and them often talking about the Gospel of Thomas, and there's some pretty key information in there about manifestation and stuff that I think we need to look at as well. And how you doing, Bugatti? Welcome, welcome, brother Musa. But anyway, Lisa, back when, like I said, we're going back to Genesis because I was looking through there and I didn't want to stop at the flood stuff. We talked about that when we were in the Lost Book. But as far as the nature of these cats, Abraham, when he first chose, keep my head on a swivel soon. I know that's right. I know that's right. When he first decided to, or was first conscripted, if you will, to serve Yahweh, he told him, fact of the matter, Yahweh called him out. He said, go from your country. This is in Genesis chapter 12. In chapter 11, it talks about how Terah is his father. And Terah, I mentioned before, was a temple scribe in the temple of Nanar Sen. Nanar was one of Enki's children, and he was fascinated with the moon. And later on, he became known as Sen, the moon god. Okay, but they were in Ur of the Chaldeans. That's where they lived, in Ur, which I think they made Sippar and Nippur and Ur and all that was around the same time. Yes, they were cities that were created after Eridu and Shurabak and Shumer, but they were part of the cities that were mentioned in the Lost Book. Like I think Shumer, wait a minute, Shumer, Shurabak, and Sippar were destroyed in the first calamity with the evil wind, I think. And then as they rebuilt, I think and all of them came into being after the fact. But it was one of the cities that was mentioned in the Lost Book. But that is where Nanar was housed. His house or temple was in and Yahweh called Abraham out of It's in chapter 12. It says, now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And just like that, power mad Abraham said, bet. He didn't know Yahweh from a can of paint, and he couldn't even see him. So based on a voice that he heard out in the wilderness, he uprooted his entire family because he wanted power more than what he had. And he left his family, the majority of his family. He took his wife and their entourage, his brother and him. Lot left out with Abraham, and him and Lot headed out there because Yahweh done dangled the promise that he's going to be a great man in front of him. But instead of him becoming a great man, not too long after that, by the time we get to the same chapter now, verse 10, there was a famine in the land. Yahweh didn't even take care of him through the famine. The famine got so bad till they had to leave out of the wilderness where they was roaming, where Yahweh was supposed to show them this land that he's going to send them to. He hadn't led them to the land yet. They had to skulk on back into Egypt because they was about, their entourage was about to starve out there in the wilderness, and Yahweh hadn't led them to no place where they could actually get sustenance and all this wealth and stuff that they had been promised. So they go back into Egypt, and this is where we start understanding the nature of Abraham. Because when they went into Egypt, Abraham told Sarai to lie and say that she was his sister, which truthfully, she was kind of sort of his sister, but it was the intent behind it. She was his half sister. As we find out, I think through one of the scriptures, I'm not going to read all of this stuff right now because we're going somewhere else today. But I'm just trying to bring those up to speed that aren't that familiar with the Genesis stories. But yeah, even though she was his half sister, she was actually his wife. But he lied and told her to say that she was his sister only because she was 10 years younger than him. And apparently she was very beautiful. And he was so afraid that somebody was going to find her attractive and want to unalive him so that they could get her. Now, let's be honest. I'm sure she was beautiful. The scriptures say she was. But Abraham was 74 years old, so Sarai was 64. What in the world made him think that a 64-year-old woman was going to be so attractive that the pharaohs and everybody else was going to unalive him in order to take her to wife? Especially these back then, all these misogynistic men that really, really felt like a woman that was barren or beyond the childbearing years was of very little use. So that goes to show you he's a coward, and he done put his wife up to do something that literally lie. And Yahweh, instead of taking care of him so he didn't feel pressure to lie like that, he wouldn't provide for him on the front end. But when they go into this lie, into Egypt, the Pharaoh did find her attractive and was thinking about making her one of his wives and this and that. Instead of them telling the truth and coming clean, Yahweh's solution to all of that was to bring curses on the Pharaoh. Now, all of the energy you done expended to bring active curses on the Pharaoh and his house, why couldn't you provide it for Abraham? But that's not what Yahweh did. It said that when Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful, and when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house, and for her sake, he dwelt well. For her sake, he dealt well with Abram, and he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. So he done laced him up with a bride price fit for a queen. He done gave Abram all of these goods because he's planning on taking this woman to wife, because Abram done lied and told him that's his sister. So the Pharaoh would have had every right to take her. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." And Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all he had. So now Abram done figured out this lying thing I got. This is a nice little con he running. He done gone and told these people that's his sister. And then Yahweh, instead of providing for Abraham or setting the record straight, he jumps up and throws curses over here so that this man, the Pharaoh and his house, they getting sick, all the rest of that stuff. And they want to know what's going on. And then they realize they've offended this man by coveting after his wife. So he gets to leave with all these horses and servants and food and all pack camels and all the rest of that. So he done did him a nice little lick. Okay. So then Abraham and Lot go their separate ways, and then Lot takes off to the land of Sodom. And of course, we know that's another famous Bible story that don't go so well. Hold on. Well, they get to the story of Lot later. They go to Sarai and Hagar at the end, because Sarai was still wanting this promised baby that Yahweh had promised that Abram was going to have in his old age. And Sarai still wasn't getting pregnant and still wasn't getting pregnant. So she finally said, take my servant girl, and impregnate her so you can have a son. And she did. And Abram, Hagar bore Abram a child named Ishmael. And let me see, hold on. And then, like I said, it looks like Sarai, after Sarai conceived, she started getting a little attitude. She got to smelling herself a little bit because she had borne Abram a son and Sarai still hadn't. And that's when Sarai said, you got to send them away. And Abram didn't want to do it. And finally, the Lord told him, listen to your wife. And he said to him in Genesis 16, verse 11, the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. He shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he shall dwell over against all his kinsmen. Don't call me anti-Islam, but that's in the book. And this particular chapter, Genesis, is not only in the Christian book, it's part of the Talmud, so it's in the Jewish book too. But the nation of Islam are descendants of Ishmael. And according to the scriptures, Ishmael was prophesied by the Lord himself to be a wild donkey of a man with his hand against everyone and everyone's hand against him, and he shall dwell over against all his kinsmen. And is that not happening today? Muslims can't even get along amongst themselves. They talk about peace and prosperity and the brotherhood and all the rest of that, but there's no real unity there. Not really. So then they had Abraham and the covenant of circumcision. I think Abraham was like 99 years old when Yahweh decided on the circumcision covenant, and he went ahead and got circumcised. And then Isaac's birth was promised, but again, he took so long to do it. By now, Yahweh made the promise to Abraham when Abram was 74 years old. By the time we get down to this show and tell in Genesis 18, where he sat under the tree and Abram washed his feet and they sat down and had barbecue and cheese curds and milk and all that stuff, as it's described in Genesis chapter 18, Abram was 99 years old by then, or like 98. And then it gets down to the end. Sarah had basically started laughing. She was like, he ain't gave me a child in all this time. Now he coming here talking about he gonna give me a child in my old age. And it said several times she just laughed. And so it said that Yahweh asked her, why are you laughing? She was basically like, why not? You keep promising me this baby, but I ain't had no baby yet. Now you gonna wait till I'm 90 years old to talk about giving me a baby? For real? Okay. Then it goes on. We go back to Lot's situation. So Abraham intercedes for Sodom. And hold on. This is the part that gets me. There's another story in the scriptures where it talks about the men of the city, and I think it may have been another translation. I'm not sure. But here in Genesis 19 is another version of that story, or it may not be the same story, but it's another instance. But it just speaks to the nature of these people this listed here in the Bible, our forefathers that chose to serve Yahweh, the principles and the things that they found it okay to do absolutely beastly. Sodom was known for, well, to this day, if you call someone a sodomite, you know what that means. Um, but the angels, the messengers of the Lord, came to visit with Abraham, and they were such attractive men that the men of Sodom wanted them. And they were about to tear the house down. They wanted them. They said, the men said, wait a minute, hold on, I'm going to read this. The two angels came to Sodom. This is Genesis chapter 19. The two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, "My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise up early and go on your way." "No, we will spend the night in the town square," they said. But he pressed them strongly, so they turned aside to him and entered his house, and he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Lot already knew that it wasn't safe for them to spend the night in the town square. That part. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man, surrounded the house, and they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them." And you know, in the biblical sense, what knowing means. It's in the biblical sense to know conjugally. Let's put it that way. Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof." And we sit up in church and listen to this like this is all right. All they can talk about is how wicked the people in Sodom were and how righteous Abraham and Lot were. He was getting ready to literally give them his daughters to tear asunder so that he could protect these men like they had a good sense enough or strength enough to protect themselves. But just to keep from being embarrassed or whatever, these people can't control themselves. He's not looking for the men to control the situation. He's willing to give them his daughters and let them do with them as they will. And there's another account in the scriptures, and it may be later on in Genesis. I can't remember if it's Genesis or Leviticus, wherever it is, that they literally, the man gives his servant girl to him, and they SA her all night until she falls unalive in the morning. And they put this in the Bible like it's all right. And the preachers sit there and preach it like it's all right. Like Paul Wallace said, worshiping a monster makes monsters out of us, because we have sat here for hundreds, thousands of years now and read these accounts over and over and over again. And humans have gotten so conditioned to accepting that that is just and righteous on Yahweh's part and on Abraham and Isaac and all the rest of them's part. We accept that foolishness and that filth. And they said, "Stand back." And they, well, let me see. Yeah. But they said, "Stand back." And they said, "This fellow came to sojourn, and he has become the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." Then they pressed hard against the man Lot and drew near to break the door down. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out, groping for the door. And that's when they told them that they need to get out of the city and go on about their business and leave Sodom and Gomorrah behind. But you see what I'm saying? The angels had the ability to strike all of those people blind and protect themselves. But before it even got to that part, so he wouldn't have to be embarrassed, Lot was literally willing to sacrifice his virgin daughters to a crowd of angry men that were in the throes of some sort of sexual frenzy. Okay. Now, the daughters ate much better, because when they go to leave this Sodom and Gomorrah, that's when we get another Bible story about Lot's wife, how she was turned into a pillar of salt because she looked back with longing. And honestly, I don't think it was so much of her looking back with longing. The city, they do show an area in the world where to this day there's a high salt and sulfur content. It was some kind of a natural disaster there, or more likely they was probably struck with one of their weapons, but it did cause a large profusion or a raining down of salt and sulfur and all of that. So she hung around in the background too long, and one of them hit her. It turned her into a pillar of salt. The preachers will stand there and justify that because she shouldn't have left. She should have obeyed the letter of Yahweh and da 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 da. That may be true, but that ain't the takeaway from that story. The takeaway from that story is after they left Sodom and Gomorrah, which was destroyed for wickedness, the two daughters of Lot turned around and got Lot drunk, and they each, on 2 consecutive nights, they went in and they had relations with their own biological father, and both of those girls deliberately got impregnated by their father. And I don't know what he was supposed to be drinking. It wasn't no Everclear back then, but how you get so drunk that you sit there and allow, like, drunk actions is sober thoughts. That part. How you sit there and impregnate your own daughters? How can you possibly even get that drunk? But this happens right here in the Bible. And then Abraham, we went from Lot. Now it jumps back in the scriptures in chapter 20 to Abraham, his next set of exploits. He did that whole con game with the Pharaoh so tough, it went out so good that he does it again with Abimelech, another ruler in the area. Hold on. Yeah. For chapter 20 says, from there Abraham journeyed toward the territory of the Negeb and lived between Kadesh and Shur, and he sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you've taken, for she is a man's wife. Now Abimelech had not approached her. So he said, Lord, will you kill an innocent people? Did he not himself say to me, she is my sister, and she herself said, he is my brother? In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands, I have done this. Then God said to him in the dream, yes, I know that you have done this in the integrity of your heart, and it was I who kept you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. Now then, return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, so that he will pray for you and you shall live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours. So Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told them all these things, and the men were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, what have you done to us? And how have I sinned against you that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me things that ought not be done. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what did you see that you did this thing? Abraham said, I did it because I thought there is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And when God caused me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, this is the kindness you must do to me. At every place which we come, say of me, he is my brother. So he openly admitting it. Yeah, she is my half sister, but she is also my wife. But I told her to tell everybody that she's my brother because I figured y'all, I'm protecting myself. I don't care if I rain curses down on y'all. What I care? Yahweh got my back. He gonna thug it out for me. He said he gonna, like I said, he gonna. This is a lick I can pull because if anybody finds her attractive enough to try to take her as a wife, Yahweh gonna rain curses on them, and the only way to get out of that, you have to lace me up with gifts. Hey, Cece, welcome. That's literally kind of a strong arm robbery. Like I said, it's a con game. And Abraham is doing that. But this is the person that we're supposed to see as righteous unto the Lord. Unto which Lord? Yahweh's righteousness is wickedness to anybody with good sense. And you can see it right here lined up in the scriptures. But anywho, let's go. So then Abimelech took sheep and oxen and made servants and male servants and female servants and gave them to Abraham and returned Sarah his wife to him. And Abimelech said, "Behold, my land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you." To Sarah he said, "Behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a sign of your innocence in the eyes of all who are with you, and before everyone you are vindicated." Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and also healed his wife and female slaves so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. But this is the nature of the God most of the world is currently serving, and it's the nature of the ancestors who led us into serving this God. Because there was plenty of other Elohim that they could have served. Like I said, he literally left out of the temple of Nanarsan and roamed out in the wilderness because Yahweh told him to. Hey, Marvin Martian, welcome. So then, after all of that, this is the part that gets me, because we talk, like I said, Genesis chapter 5 gives these lineages of all these various beings that show up in the lost book of Enki as hybrids of Enki. Noah was one of Enki's children. Enoch was one of Enki's children. Kenan was one of Enki's children, and on and on and on. But here in chapter Genesis 21, it says the Lord, because he had promised her after Sarah laughed about him promising that baby and not delivering it for 24 years. He's told them, this time next year, I will return. Now, this is the part, because if he is supposedly doing this artificial insemination and just you being touched by an angel from a distance, why did he have to come back? And he told them, he said, hold on. Yeah, in chapter 18, he said, verse 14, talking about, is anything too hard for the Lord? Well, let's see, 13. The Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. He said, no, but you did laugh. But he had to return in order to give her this son. That should tell people right then and there, this isn't him blessing Abraham to all of a sudden make him fertile where he had not been. This is literally Yahweh conceiving this child. But Yahweh hated children. Hated humans. So he really had to get his mind right. He was not a geneticist. He couldn't take them in the lab like Thoth and Enki and Ninmah did and do an in vitro fertilization and an artificial insemination and all that. He had to come back to visit Abraham and Sarah about that time next year. And then chapter 21, verse 1, the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. So Abraham didn't really have no kids. That was Yahweh's baby. But, like I say, mama's baby, daddy's maybe. But it took him so long to do it because he hated humans. He didn't get down with us like that. And so then they had Isaac was circumcised and all of that. And then Hagar and Ishmael get sent away under Yahweh's protection. And then I'm trying to think with Abimelech. Yeah, Abraham tried to pull this con game or whatever again on Abimelech. I don't know why he thought that he was gonna forget. I don't know. And then after that in 22 is this other nature of Yahweh story that we always get in church about how Yahweh told Abraham, now that I done gave you this son, take him up on the mountaintop and sacrifice him to me to prove your loyalty to me. That is the most idiotic thing ever. You took 24 years to give this man a son. He was 99 years old when the child was conceived. And now Isaac is old enough that he's up a pretty good age because he can carry the firewood, he can do this, he can do that. And Yahweh told him to take him to the mountaintop. That was a 3-day journey. So for at least 3 days, Abraham had the stress of believing that he was taking his son up this mountain to lay him on a pile of wood and cut his throat to Yahweh because Yahweh said so. And even Isaac was concerned because he was like, Daddy, where is the sacrifice? And he was like, don't worry about it. The Lord will provide. What you mean the Lord will provide, Father? We going up this thing. I'm carrying the wood. The donkey got the wood. I'm carrying this. I'm carrying that. What do you mean? You have always wondered, hope, prayed that Anunnaki women are the hybrid like humans as much as their male counterparts. If you come with that foolishness, Marvin, you're gonna be put out of here. Ain't nobody talking about mating with nobody now. I'm talking about what had already happened. You don't need no sugar mama. And you tired of this rock, you ain't gonna have to worry about being if you genuinely tired of this rock, cut out the foolishness and mentally ascend, spiritually ascend. Because the only way you gonna ever get off this rock is if you ascend enough to cheat the dark death, according to the Emerald Tablets. And running around talking about getting a sugar mama that's an Anunnaki, that's some very low base, immoral, amoral, profane type energy that will keep you stuck on this rock in 3D foolishness forever. Okay, just so we're clear. Because all Anunnaki DNA wasn't even compatible with humans. The reason Enki could get away with it was because Enki was our true progenitor. The Adamu had Enki's DNA in him. So all of the children that came out of the Adamic line were also his children. And the Anunnaki did mate very close in their bloodline without any genetic problems from it. Ninmah was their sister by a different mother. Ninmah, Enki, and Enlil all had the same father. They just had different mothers. Ninmah had 2 daughters for Enki and a son for Enlil. And they didn't have any cognitive dysfunction or anything like that. But just because they do that don't mean we can. Because half of our genetic component came from an earthbound hominid that they found here. Not according to the lost book, Nudimmud. Maybe in the Babylonian. Let me see. I don't think so though. Oh yeah, it is. Okay. And they refer to Neptune and it is Ea. Yeah, you're right. Oh. I'm not sure where that came from. Did somebody say something about Nudimmud earlier? But yeah, Nudimmud is Ea or Enki. But in any event, yeah, so we got past the sacrifice of Isaac. He didn't have to do it. But again, it always kind of bothered me that they stand up in church and talk about this stuff. And the only thing they get out of the lesson is, oh, it was so good that Abraham was so obedient to the Lord. What kind of Lord tells you to go take the child that they done promised you and took you 24 years to give you, and then turn around and tell you to prove your loyalty by going out there and unaliving your own child? That would have had me questioning the contract in the first place. Everything out the gate from Yahweh would have had me questioning. You gonna call me out of my father's house, away from the religion of my birth and my father's priesthood, out into the wilderness. You're not going to provide for me. You're not going to help take care of me. You will show up to throw curses on people on my behalf, but you're still not providing for me. It take you 24 years to fulfill your promise to me, and then as soon as you do, you tell me to go up here and take this promise fulfilled. How you gonna make me a mighty nation if you turn around and unalive? You done sent away my firstborn son by the concubine. Now this child is a legitimate heir, and you gonna tell me to take him up on the mountaintop and cut his throat? Why is Abraham still following this crazy behind man? And I'm saying man because he showed up in the physical. He ain't no God. Abraham saw firsthand. He saw him with his own two eyes. The rest of the people that was sitting on behind the wall and hearing behind the burning bush and in the sky and this and all that flashbang stuff, they might have had an excuse to still believe that Yahweh was an all-powerful, invisible sky daddy. But Abraham, according to this book, saw Yahweh with his own two eyes and knew that he was a physical being, and he still was so low in character that he still aligned himself in eternal allegiance to this kind of an Elohim when there was all other kinds of much more benevolent Elohim that were dealing much better with their people, much more peaceful, much more prosperity, all the rest of that. There was dozens of other Elohim that he could have chosen to serve, and this is the one he hooked up with. That says so volumes about Abraham. So then, let me see. Yeah, Sarah was buried at 127 years, according to this. And then they get to the story of Isaac and Rebekah in chapter 24. The main thing that got me with that is Isaac really, like I say, the apple don't fall far from the tree. You have to hope there's as many good as bad. Elohim stresses you out being so Gnostic. Uh, I don't have to hope that because I done read the book and you can kind of sort of see and understand. All throughout that book, you know how many it was that was really causing the main problems? Two, three, if you want to throw Inanna in the mix, because she got so mad after Dumuzi basically. And even at that, that whole thing with Anana and Dumuzi and her being upset and starting the wars and all the rest of that, that was because of Marduk's plotting. Marduk was power mad and trying to get control of Earth and all its people, and so was Enlil. Those were the two problem children, and they were actually exiled at one point, but their daddy, Anu, came to visit Earth and said, "Oh, they've been punished enough. Let them out of exile." And that's why we're dealing with the mess we're dealing with today. But it wasn't no whether there's as many good as bad. The rest of them were decent. But the most wicked one of them all was given control of earth by his daddy. Well, I do blame Anana for that because at some point you got to let it go. Dumuzi was not unalived by none of the rest of them. Dumuzi chose to go sleep with his sister to create a legitimate heir before his own wedding so that his sister would have his baby before his wife would be able to conceive a child and have his baby. That was Dumuzi's choice. And then as soon as Dumuzi allowed himself to be seduced by his sister, the sister turned around and put that poison in his head. Oh, they gonna think that you essayed me. They gonna think that they ain't gonna like it. They don't all of that other stuff. And then he ran away as a coward and slipped at the waterfall and drowned. And Anana spent the next 500 years raising hell all over the planet because she was so mad about her beloved Dumuzi instead of putting the blame where it was supposed to be. So yeah, I absolutely blame Anana for that. She was being completely unreasonable. I get that she's upset, but if anything, she should have been upset with Gesh and Marduk. Hey, Lioness Agaya. Welcome, welcome, and thank you for the compliment. Appreciate you. Yeah. So, but the family feuds did get out of hand. But like I said, all of that stuff with Isis and Horus, with Isis and Osiris first, and then Horus, every bit of that was Marduk. And even after they let him out of exile, first thing he did was start making demands on the land. And that's where he got upset with Ninurta and came after Ninurta with the weapon of the terror and destroyed Shumer and Arabak and Shumer and Shurabak and Eridu. And then turned around and uh, even after they let him up out of because that war that happened. Remember we read about the war, and he was out there trying to get to I think it was Ninurta, either Ninurta or Nanar, but he got trapped in the pyramid, and the chambers fell on him, and they were going. He was such a problem child that they was truly going to leave him locked in that pyramid and let it become his death chamber, bury him alive in the pyramid. And I think it was Ninmah that really pleaded for him, because I think that was he was Ninmah's child. Horus was a clone or artificial postmortem. Yeah, Horus was a clone. I mean, not a clone. Horus was a postmortem artificial insemination. Hmm. She couldn't bring Osiris, or Asur as they called him in the Lost Book. She could they got to him too late. But even at that, that was Marduk that got them together, and they put him in that stone sarcophagus and threw him in the ocean, and he drowned, and they couldn't bring him back to life in time. So she literally removed his phallus and extracted semen from it and artificially inseminated herself with his semen so that Horus could be born. And don't you, I mean, it's very interesting. In that story, there's a correlation. I'm not saying it's an exact correlation, but even before any of this stuff came to light through these translations, people have always understood that there was a bit of a correlation to Horus of Horus to Yeshua through the pantheons. And we were sitting there talking, I think last week, reading in John and then in the Gospel of Luke, where if you really read the scriptures with knowledge and understanding, it really does look like Yeshua would have been an artificial insemination of Mary. Not, like I said, not no virgin birth and all that mess that they taught. Yeshua was an artificial insemination of Enki's seed with Mary. So the fact that Horus has a Christic correlation through from the English pantheon translating into modern day understanding is very, very fitting. Yeah, Marvin, like I said, I really, really believe that. And I also believe that not only was he an artificial insemination of Enki's, I believe he was a consciousness transfer of Thoth into a zygote that was born of Mary, because a lot of the things that Yeshua taught are some of the very things that show up in the Emerald Tablets. Thoth was known as the Word. Yeshua was known as the Word. Thoth was known as the Logos. Yeshua was known as the Logos. Thoth was known as the Son of Man. Yeshua was known as the Son of Man. Thoth was known as the light of the world. Yeshua was known as the light of the world. So I really believe, and when in 600 AD is when Hermes Trismegistus popped onto the scene, and he was known as the thrice born of Thoth. And I always wondered, if Hermes is the thrice born, who was the second born? It only makes sense that Yeshua was the second born. Yeah, and he did mention that he could come in avatars. When he goes into his Agwanti, he said every 100 years out of 1,000 he has to spend in that stasis state, and during that time he can incarnate in other bodies, or he can come telepathically to people and all of that. Yeah. So yeah, if Hermes is the thrice born, I fully with my entire being believe that Yeshua was the second born, because he kept saying, you don't know my father. My father is not Enki. My father is love. Everything in the scriptures, if you understand that there was more than one Elohim being talked about in this book, everything that Yeshua said points to the fact that he was absolutely not referring to Yahweh as his father. He was referring to Enki, even though he's not specifically naming him as Enki in this book. But then again, he turns around and everything that he says, especially that John chapter, what is it, in John 1:1, when it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with the Elohim, and the Word was El Shaddai. And it says in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, but that doesn't allow that sentence to make any sense. But if you actually read it in these various terms, because Elohim does not translate to God at all. That's the biggest problem with the Bible. It's religion to have people believing that the word that they see in the scriptures as God is actually supposed to be God, and it's not. It's either Elohim or El Shaddai, and in one or two instances in the scriptures, it's El Elyon, the destroyer. Yahweh referred to himself as El Elyon, the destroyer. But most of the other instances of God in the scriptures should either be Elohim as powerful ones, or Elohe, a singular powerful one, or El Shaddai, sons of the powerful ones. It's ridiculous to you. People read it literally with the singular God translation in English, completely distorts and discredits what's really going on. Absolutely. That's why I'm here discussing this now. There's not a whole lot of people that show up for this. And I get it. In time, we'll figure out how to court the algorithm and all of that, but it's never going to be the most popular subject, because everybody don't want to know this, because what I'm talking about ain't nothing new. I was talking to somebody earlier today and yesterday. Think about how long Zecharia Sitchin was talking about this. He wrote 15 books about this very same subject with the paleo contact situation, starting way back in like the 50s and 60s. Jordan Maxwell was born in 1935 and been talking about this since the 50s and 60s. Von Daniken just passed away a couple days ago. Same thing. He wrote 40 books about this paleo contact issue. And Chariots of the Gods came out in 1970, 55 years ago. I was 2 years old when Chariots of the Gods came out. And people still don't get it and act like it's something new. You ain't supposed to argue, but don't let that stuff stress you out. You aren't supposed to argue with them about it. And it ain't supposed to stress you out. You're supposed to know it and understand it and teach it to those who are ready to hear it. Because you wasting your time arguing. Yeshua said, if somebody don't receive you, shake the dust off your feet and keep it moving. He said, don't cast your pearls before swine. Yeshua said that. And he also told us, if we love him, follow him. If we love him, believe him. So truthfully, the ones who genuinely get his real message and what he was actually here doing, and understand how and why he was executed off this earth, this is the time where we're being mobilized to reactivate his message. But everybody isn't going to receive it. Remember in Revelation, It says that a third of the planet will be executed because they don't want to hear it. They're going to follow Yahweh right off the edge of the cliff. It says that the blood will from those executions will run a horse's bridle high and 180 stadia long. That's almost 200 miles. So you think about where a horse's bridle would sit, how high off the ground a horse's bridle is, and a distance, even if it's only the width of a horse, which I'm sure it wouldn't be, but you think about how many people at 5 pints at a time, how many people would have to be executed to fill an area that is as wide as a horse and as high as a horse's bridle and runs for 200 miles? That's a lot. It basically says that a third of the planet will be decimated because they choose not to accept these truths. Even when it's happening, when New Jerusalem is coming down, there's still going to be plenty of these people clutching their Bibles and their pearls, arguing against it. Even though plenty of people are talking about it. I come here online every week and somebody is either throwing curses at me or telling me how wrong I am, or I need to repent, or I'm going to die and go to hell and all that other stuff. They will accept the lie all day because it's easier to lie to people than it is to convince them that they've been lied to. And once they've been lied to, they will continue to accept the lie rather than turn away from whatever because they don't want to feel stupid. Or they're not humble enough to understand it ain't a matter of being stupid. All of humanity has been lied to. And it's time for us to wake up and refuse to continue to perpetuate the lie. You say you learn the hard way. Not all people want to awaken or want the weight of the truth. Exactly, Lioness. Yes, indeed. Indeed. Is they're defending their false preconceived notions about reality. Yeah. Because my thing, listen, it always amazed me anyway why people would feel, or why do they think that just because their grandparents or their great grandparents or somebody with a funny hat and a long robe told them that this is unequivocally the way it is, that's automatically the truth. They lie to us about everything. So to me, once I got to the age and the stage of life that I realized that my mother was not the most beautiful woman that ever walked the planet, and my father was not the most handsomest whatever that ever walked the planet. Once I'm old enough, and I'm okay with that. Like I said, I'm not insulting my parents in any way, but children have, when we're in that, when you get your first set of handlers, your parents. Hey, Mumphy, welcome, welcome, love. Your first set of handlers are your parents for most people. And if they're even halfway decent people, you come under this illusion because you look to them for everything and you think that they are just, oh, they can do no wrong and they can slay dragons and they can do the, like, say, your mother's the most beautiful, everything, and your father is the most, he's a shining knight. But that illusion don't last that long. It only takes for you to get old enough for to get caught up, catch them in their first lie, their first major lie, and that takes the rose-colored glasses off, or it should. Oh, thank you, Mumphy. Appreciate it. Yeah. So once you realize that and the bloom is off the rose, so to speak, if you're a critical thinker, you should understand that it's a lot of things they could lie about, including your religion. Now, I get it. The programming is strong, so you don't want to think that. And then even when you start realizing things ain't feeling right or ain't lining up right, you're scared to buck the jack because of the programming. However, there also comes a point in time where, you know what? I got a chance that, like I said, they claim, because for me, here's the thing. I was afraid to step away from mainstream religion as well at first because I didn't want to be wrong. Like you say, I didn't believe in a burning hell, thank goodness, but I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to displease Jehovah because that's what I was told my whole life, is that I got to serve Jehovah. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That's the way I was indoctrinated. So I was very much afraid of getting it wrong. But I finally reached a point where I was like, you know what? Yeshua said God is love. He also said that his judgments are light and his Father judges not. So even if I get it wrong, as long as my heart and intentions are in the right place, I can't get it wrong. I just felt like he would forgive me. Yeah. And it's a lonely walk, but guess what? I always felt like I was alone anyway, even when I was in the midst of all of that. Yeah, those were the people that where I was at, and that was the club that I was in, but I felt like an outsider. I absolutely hated getting up and going and knocking on people's doors and all that stuff. I'd be praying that they didn't answer the door. I hated going to the Kingdom Hall and having to do all of those the talks and the this and the study in the Bible. They literally turned me against Bible study for a long time because of the way it was waterboarded on me. And then when I started reading their publications, I only read as much as I needed to be able to sort of kind of act like I had studied the lesson so I could participate in whatever I was assigned to participate in. But it just felt really, really weird. Hey, Akasha. Said one of your friends has walked away from her Jehovah's faith because she didn't like some of their ways now. They honestly, and here's the thing, Monty, I have no doubt in my mind that the vast majority of Jehovah's Witnesses are very, very sincere people, but they've been hoodwinked and bamboozled just like the rest of Christendom. They genuinely think that they are different from the other Christian sects. They do. They think that everybody else in Christendom got it wrong, but they got it right because they serve Jehovah and they wear his name. They don't understand that they're just a wave of that false light or whatever, that earlier understanding that came out from 1830s to like the 1930s in that century when Holy Spirit was first becoming active again on the planet, that it was part of that whole Yeshua's, Yahweh's kind of stirring things up. Like they said, he'd be let out for a time so that he could do his worst to mislead humanity before the end. That, because think about it, it was Joseph Smith. He's the most off the wall of all of those. Well, Scientology is pretty nutso too. But yeah, the Mormons, they they think they're the only ones with the truth. But how the Mormons gonna have the truth and they preach active racism? Joseph Smith was a huge racist and a huge misogynist. How in the world do they think they got the truth? They forego earthly pleasures so that when they die, they can get a whole planet full of virgins. Like women's thoughts and what women need and want emotionally don't even matter. It's all about pleasing the men. And they're so juvenile in their sexual repression that they think that it's a gift and a right of God to receive an entire planet of virgins to serve their every whim. Forget whether the virgins want to be bothered with them or not. That's their heavenly reward. The women don't get no reward. They got to sit around and wait for him to get through them. And if it's a whole planet of them, some of them may never see him in their lifetime. And according to Mormons, that's all right. And also, according to Mormons, black people are supposed to be a race of slaves. And we're supposed to just be happy to be slaves. We should be glad to be here at the party at all. Like, and Russell was the same thing. Charles Taz Russell. But the thing that people don't understand, and I don't even fault Russell per se, I think Russell was very sincere in what he was doing. Um, but Russell, I think, passed away around 1910 or something, and then Judge Rutherford took over. And Rutherford was so whatever he had going on and his dealings, him and his original cronies actually wound up going to jail for a little while. And when they came out, they kind of hijacked the Russellites, and shifted the movement into something else. And Rutherford was on that racism agenda too. In it's not the Finished Mystery. It's I forgot the book because they actually pulled it off of the Jehovah's Witness library. They named the book, but there's an asterisk there. They took it completely out of print. There are some folks that still have that book. In fact, in my family home, if somebody ain't broke in and destroyed it, we actually had the copies of some of those older publications. And in one of them, Rutherford said that black people were supposed to be a slave race too. He said the highest in plastic surgery, prescription drugs, and but they're gonna get their own planet. Because again, but it's Smith had an idea to just separate everybody from the world, but that's like holding a spring too tight. And when you let it go, it goes out crazy. And witnesses do the same thing. They're so on the morality and the this and that, and they're going to be separate from the world. It's so much hidden SA and Child AB and all the rest of that stuff within that organization. And here, you know what really got me? Because my sister is still in it, whole thing. And when back in 2020, when they had that big expose about the cases in Australia, like the Royal Society in Australia, there were like 1,800 cases that were in Australia alone of witness AB and SA that was hidden, and because they sweep it under the rug and they gonna handle it in house and all. They don't call the police. They don't get no help for the victims. The victims have to sit in the congregations right there together during their punishment. It's just wicked. Yeah. Um. Have a good evening, Mumphy. Yep. It is now 9:21. So yeah, you're 5 hours ahead of us. What I am gonna do, I had said I was gonna start trying to do an earlier stream during an earlier part of the day, Mumphy. So next week, look for that. I'm gonna try to figure out a way to do like an evening live stream and an earlier in the day live stream. But I also got to figure out my TikTok live stream. So I got to really sit with that, but I do want to start doing some earlier in the day streams so that I can connect with some other folks as well. So yeah, hopefully be on the lookout for that. And I may even post it in the community tab once I actually figure the schedule out. Okay. And yep, lioness, repression and shame leads to horrific acts. Absolutely. And but here's the thing, when I was reading about or hearing about all of that, and I was watching a documentary about those cases in Australia, and was talking to my nephew, who he's not in the organization anymore, but my sister very much is. Do you know they sat there in the district conventions that year and in the congregations the year that all of that mess hit the fan? They sat there and tried to explain that away, that, well, we're not saying to go against the local authorities or whatever, but they don't always have the all of the correct information, and I'm sure that they're trying to do the best that they can, but they're not aware of all the factors, and they did all of that circular talking. Oh, you're welcome, Mumphy. Yeah, I'll post it. You're welcome. And you said you part of the reason you're so Gnostic is you were SA as a kid. It ruined your outlook. Yeah. Now, fortunately, I mean, there was some. My mind didn't have nothing to do with the congregation. I experienced some stuff, but it wasn't. It was like, anyway. That's a whole other story. But I saw it in the congregation. My nephew. Now he is gone. Now he passed a couple years ago, but I watched him bury some stuff that he did. He was like 16, 17 years old and had inappropriately dealt with several children in the congregation. Some of them his own nieces and nephews, and or cousins rather, not nieces and nephews. Some of them were his cousins, and some of them were children of some other folks in the congregation. But because his daddy was an elder, he got a slap on the wrist, and they quieted it down. They never reported it to the police, and the children that were involved never got any kind of therapy. And that genuinely made me look at them all sideways too. I'm like, are you serious? Mm-mm. See, you wouldn't wish your life on your worst enemy, but learning had been an escape for you. Thankfully, you really feel like this world is hell sometimes. Honestly, Marvin, I'm sorry you feel that way because one of these days I'm hoping you'll get to a point of your evolution where you realize that a lot of those things, even though they're harsh, they probably, our path of least resistance is not always a path of no resistance. And if you look around at some of the other viable options that were around you at the time, there was probably a lot of things going on around you that could have actually took you all the way off the planet. So I'm not saying it's good that it happened, of course not. But sometimes some of those things are allowed to happen to us because it's relevant to what we're going to be called to heal, as far as, like I said, generational curses and ancestral work that we're doing for our bloodline. There are things that we're being called to heal, and things that we need to ascend and learn forgiveness and unconditional love about, so that we can empathize with people that are going through those things, because we're being awakened a little bit ahead of the masses for the purpose of assisting them as they awaken. It's a rough world out there, and a lot of folks have been through a whole lot of stuff. So sometimes the things that we go through was arrows in our quiver in preparation for our spiritual walk ahead. You say you'd rather draw the short stick than ever hit someone with the big one. Yeah. Yeah, kind of. I mean, most healers are driven to a point of healing because of having to heal their own pain. And unfortunately, it is, like you said, most of us could, if we told our story from our initial point of pain, we can make a whole room full of grown people cry. But the more you heal and the more you do the inner work, the shadow work, and all the rest of that, you really begin to, it's hard to even say it because some of us have been through some real crazy stuff, but eventually you get to a point where you begin to see the hand of spirit in it, and you get to see the blessing in the lesson and understand that it is a lesson. The fact that you survived it and you still here is because you were strong enough. That I do believe. Like I said, what does it say? God will never allow you to be tested beyond what you can bear. Our spirit guides are here, and again, it's not an easy walk. It is not an easy walk for the chosen, but we're not tested beyond what we can bear, because we're being called to extract those lessons and be able to heal from them to help others. Yep. Yep. Anywho, let's get back over here, because where I was wanted to get to, hold on, I had already made it up to 20. Oh, Isaac and Rebecca. Let's get back over there. Isaac ain't, he, like I said, when the apple don't fall far from the tree. Oh, the apple did not fall far from Abraham's tree. Isaac, when he got ready to take a wife, he said, "Do not take a wife from the Canaanites, from any of them around us." He had his servant go back into his people's land, and he married his niece. And yeah, he wanted Rebecca, but he got wound up. I think he got Leah first, and then he still wound up having to go. But this is the thing that gets me. We read these stories, and if you're not familiar with the story with Leah and Rebecca, Isaac saw Rebecca at the well, and he really wanted her. So he was trying to negotiate for her. And I think, was it her father was Laban, I think. He said, if you want her, you got to work for me for 7 years to get her. Forget a bride price. You going to work for me for 7 years. And Isaac said, okay. And then he turned around. He did that work for him for 7 years. And then the daddy, another shiesty behind, turned around, and instead of giving him Rebecca as he had promised, he gave him, no, that was Leah and Rachel with Jacob. I'm sorry. I'm getting stories crossed up. But Rebecca was his niece. So, yeah. But it was Jacob, I'm sorry, that had Leah and Rachel. But Jacob wasn't no better either. because Jacob was the one that sat there and tricked his blind old father to receive the blessing that uh, Isaac was going to give Esau. They had a blood feud their whole life. Jacob and Esau were twins. And the story supposedly goes that Jacob had stuck his hand out of the birth canal first, or something, like he was going to come out first. And Esau snatched him back, and Esau was born first. So Jacob already felt some type of way about that because Esau had the birthright. But then later on, they were in the field and hungry and all of that, and Esau tricked Jacob by forcing him to sell his birthright for a bowl of stew, supposedly. Because Esau was like, you carrying on about a birthright? What good is a birthright gonna do me if I starve to death? You want the birthright here? We're twins, like, for real. What difference does it make? If it's that important to you, fine, you can have the birthright. Now give me something to eat. But later on in life, when Isaac got older, they were coming to him before he died, and Jacob wanted a blessing and Esau wanted a blessing, and their mama was so shysty till she told him, put on these fur garments and stuff because Isaac can't see well anymore, but if you wear these garments, you're gonna smell like the animal pelts and stuff, because Jacob was a farmer, and Esau was, they said he was ruddy and he was very hairy and he was a hunter. So she told him to wear the pelts and stuff. So when when Isaac started feeling around to see which one he talking to, he's gonna feel basically Esau's clothes and think that he's dealing. So basically, Jacob stole Esau's blessing. And they put that story in the Bible like it's all right and it was supposed to be done. And I'm like, these people, all of these stories in the scriptures, they are hoodwinking each other, pulling these darn con games, lying to each other, threatening to unalive other people and themselves, incest. It's a whole hot mess of immorality, and they have the nerve to turn around and preach morality. That's the real hypocrisy of the Bible. Ain't nothing moral about none of these people. They lie, cheat, steal, and kill all through the Old Testament. All through it. And then turn around and tell us about how moral we supposed to be. Okay. And then Isaac turned around and tried that same thing, that con game that Abraham did with Abimelech. He told Rachel to go in there, and not Rachel, yeah, hold on. Rebecca. Isaac was married to Rebecca, yeah. But when they started traveling, he told Rebecca to tell Abimelech that she was his sister. Now, she was his niece, but that's neither here nor there. That was still his wife. But he did that same mess that his daddy did so that he could get a whole bunch of loot, silver and camel and servants and da 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 da, because they've offended Yahweh. Now Yahweh gonna go and cause a curse of infertility on these people and strike them sick and all the rest of that stuff, and then turn around, and in order to get the curses up off of them, they got to pay off Isaac for this con game that he initiated with Abimelech. But Abimelech was smart by then. It didn't work. He was like, oh, no, 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 no. Your daddy done, he ran this on me once. And he tried to come back and do it to me again. I'm well aware, y'all. Go on about your business. Pass through my land and go on about your business. I don't want your women. Yeah, but he tried it. He did. And then, let me see. Oh, one of the things that it got me, because when this curse came down, this is one of the, hold on. I'm gonna read part of this because I want y'all to see. Again, this is the nature of the people that we got sucked into these religions by. Now, Rebecca, this is Genesis chapter 27. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau his older son and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, quiver and bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Now, Esau had already basically has spent his whole life as the odd man out because he sold his birthright, and they never let him live that down. But Jacob, I mean Isaac, is going to try to make this right before he died. He said, I'm going to give you a blessing. Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now, therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, that I may prepare from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies." But Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, "Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him, and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing." His mother said to him, "Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go bring them to me." So he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. And she put the delicious food and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. So he went in to his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat out of my game, that your soul may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Sat up and told a bald-faced lie. Even like he said, "I'm blind, but I ain't crazy. I just told you to go do this. How in the world you done went out and hunted this animal and dressed it and cooked it, and you here back here already with food? How you got back here so quick?" "The Lord bless me." Wickedness. You lying to an old, dying, blind man, and your mama is helping you do it. But these are the people that we're supposed to have such righteous standards behind. So then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, "This voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau?" He said, "I am." Then he said, "Bring it near to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you." So he brought it near to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near and kiss me, my son." So he came near and kissed him. And Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him and said, "See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven, and the fairness and the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let the people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you." But just in case y'all don't realize, and we might get to it later, Jacob gets a name change. In case you didn't know, Jacob is Israel. So the entire foundation of the nation of Israel is somebody who is so morally bankrupt, that they would cheat their own twin out of a blessing and lie to a blind old man who is dying, lied straight to his father and put God in the middle of it. That part, that's the nation of Israel. Why do we think that that's such a wonderful thing? Why do we think that they're God's chosen people? Oh, they are Yahweh's chosen people, but don't you see what a match a vengeful, nasty, lying, bloodthirsty, dishonest God for a vengeful, nasty, lying, dishonest, bloodthirsty people. Why do we think we're supposed to be following Yahweh just because Israel did? And then basically this is where there's that whole idea, and Yahweh still turns around, and even centuries later it still remained where Yahweh said, Jacob have I loved and Esau have I hated. Because again, the Edomites, well, the descendants of Esau fled into the land of Edom. They fled into the hills, and the Edomites basically merged with the followers, and so the folks from the descendants of Esau became synonymous with the Edomites over time. And it is said that Yeshua is an Edomite, not um, a true Israelite. Yes, a Jew, in that they all from the same basic family, and that's where a lot of people in the world get crossed up too. We feel like Jews is all one thing. Well, Christians ain't all one thing. It's 45,000 different denominations of Christianity. Do they not understand that even back then the different factions were splitting off from themselves even back then? All biblical Jews wasn't of the same tribe. All biblical Jews wasn't worshiping the same Elohim. Some of them, like I said, Terah's people was over there worshiping Nanarsan. Some of them were still worshiping Enki. Some of them was over there worshiping Anana. Some of them were over there worshiping Asherah. Some were worshiping Isis. Some were worshiping Marduk. It was a whole bunch of Elohim, and it was very few who actually chose to worship Yahweh. That was one of the reasons he had to go around and recruit people. And he recruited Abraham and he recruited Moses because Yahweh picked the outliers, the morally bankrupt, the ones who stood to gain something and didn't mind taking the shortcuts to get it. Abraham was a liar and a con man. Moses was literally on the run for his life because he had taken the life of one of Pharaoh's guards. He was saved from death as an infant by the Pharaoh's daughter. And he was so disloyal that he went off in a fit of rage because he didn't like the way that one of the whatever was going on with the Israelites. He didn't like the way they was being treated. So he turned around. Hold on, I'm trying to get over here. That's so weird. Anyway, he was trying he didn't like the fact of the way that the Israelites was being treated. So he struck the guard down and then got scared and went on the run. That's why he left Egypt, because he was afraid for his life. And Yahweh saw him out there on the run and picked him off and said, I know, I promised that I was going to free Israel before, or what I said I was going to make them a mighty nation, but I did. He turned around and prophesied that instead of them becoming a mighty nation right away, that they would be in captivity for 400 years, and then he would come and fulfill his stuff. And he ain't see no problem with that. And them dumb behind Abraham and Isaac and Lot and all that, they didn't care nothing about that either. They let that ride. It took you 24 years to fulfill your promise to the original forefather. And even before his life ended, you reneged on that deal and said that you were going to keep Israel in captivity. You were going to basically abandon them and that they would be taken into captivity for 400 years. And then when you do come back, you pick another outlier, a murderer, Moses, and that's going to be your right hand man that's going to come in and be your spokesperson. How is a righteous God choosing wicked people to be their spokespeople? But because the preachers and the pastors and the rabbis tell us that these men are righteous, they get mad if you don't turn around and peace be upon them and all the rest of that stuff. Like you can't even speak their name without bowing and scraping. But everything that they did according to their own stuff they put in this book is nothing that we need to be bowing and scraping and praising for or following behind. None of it. But here we are, 2,500 years later, still following behind their wickedness and wonder why the world is in such a messed up state. And it's interesting, they said that Esau married an Ishmaelite, so second generation, but they still cousins. You know what I mean? You still have plenty of other people in the land, and they're still choosing to. Yeah, it's interesting. And then, of course, Jacob goes and marries Leah and Rachel because their father would not, like I said, he reneged on the deal. He wanted Rachel. He worked for her for 7 years and they gave him Leah. Instead, he had to work another 7 years to get Rachel, but he went ahead and took care of it. So Laban was also a very dishonest man. How you gonna tell this man, first of all, why in the world they paid bride price and all of that, but you refused a respectful bride price? You're gonna make this man indenture himself to you for 7 years in order to get your daughter's hand in marriage, and then when it's time to fulfill your bargain, you turn around and renege on it in the seventh year and tell him, I know what I said, but if you really want Rachel, you're gonna have to take Leah first, and you're gonna have to give me another 7 years before you can get Rachel. That's dishonest. That's wickedness. If it was done today, oh, he'd have been sued the F out of in court and probably wound up in jail for fraud. Right or right? Because as bad as trafficking is, this is a deal that we made. And if this is the custom, you promised me this bride for 7 years worth of my blood, sweat, and tears. And I done gave it to you, and now you going to switch out on me? No. And then after he did all of that, he said Jacob had as soon, okay, let me get down to chapter 30. He finally got her, he got Jacob, I mean, he got Rachel, he got Leah, and then Leah had like 6 children for Jacob, and Rachel hadn't had any. So hold on, let me see. I'll just go ahead and read it because I'm trying to cherry pick through it. It's easy for me to read it. You said Yahweh is called Tammuz too? Yeah. When Rachel saw, this is chapter 30 in Genesis. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, give me children or I shall die. Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in the place of God who has withheld from you fruit of the womb? Then she said, here is my servant Bilhah. Go into her that she may give birth on my behalf. that even I may have children through her. So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went in to her, and Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has judged me and has also heard my voice and given me a son. Therefore she called his name Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. So she called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Then Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, good fortune has come, so she called his name Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, happy am I, for women have called me happy, so she called his name Asher. In the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? Rachel said, then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes. When Jacob came in from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, you must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he lay with her that night, and God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, God has given me my wages because I gave my servant to my husband. So she called his name Issachar. And Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. And Leah said, God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will honor me because I have borne him six sons. So she called his name Zebulun. Afterwards, she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. So she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, saying, may the Lord add to me another son. So even amongst the women, they shiesty, they bed hopping, they plotting and scheming against the second wife and the other wife. And Leah and Rachel was blood sisters and still doing each other dirty. And he's turning around, he's sleeping with all of them. He's sleeping with the servants and the wives, the servants. It's a hot mess. That's why I said, why do people see all of this stuff as holy? I don't know. Because the preacher said it was holy. But I'm not paraphrasing, I'm literally reading straight from the book. But they want to interpret it away. We don't need to interpret it, we just need to read it. For real. I mean, some of it requires some mental gymnastics, but if you just taking it at what they're telling you, these histories of what they did, and they put it down here like they're proud of it. And I'm like, proud of what? Why? This is not behavior that anyone that calls themselves spiritual should want to be emulating, in my opinion, you know? Let me see. As soon as Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Give me wives and my children for whom I have served you, that I may go, for you know the service that I have given you. But Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages and I will give it. Jacob said to him, you yourself know how I have served you and how your livestock has fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when I shall provide for my own household, when shall I provide for my own household also? He said, what shall I give you? Jacob said, you shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later, when you come to look into my wages with you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted amongst the goats and black amongst the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen. Laban said, "Good, let it be as you have said." But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in the charge of his sons. So Laban is a crook too. That's why I say you'd have made this man work for you for 14 years, and he has expanded your wealth exponentially. And now he's saying, I have done all that I'm required to do and then some for you. As a son-in-law, I'm just asking to be allowed to leave in peace. And Laban don't want him to go. So he said, as much as I've grown your stock, all I'm asking, I don't need no money. Just let me take, like you said, all of the odd ones. I'll take the oddballs, all the black sheep, all the speckled sheep, all the striped sheep, anything that isn't pure white. Let me have that, and then you can see that I'm being honest. That's all I want is the off brand, and let me go. And Laban is so crooked that he goes and picks through the flock and takes all of what Jacob normally would have been able to take by their agreement that Laban agreed to. He go and hide it and give that livestock to his sons to hide, so that Jacob won't have nothing. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. Then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the sticks. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks, and so the flocks brought forth stripes, speckled and spotted. So Jacob still managed to get his lick back anyway, in despite of Laban being such a dishonest man. And Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped and all the black in the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart and did not put them in with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flock, he would not lay them there, so the feebler would be Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man increased greatly and had large flocks, female servants and male servants, and camels and donkeys. So they just all just doing, you said they will make evil fair seeming. Yeah. They and the crazy part is this is the stuff that they're doing as they are laying the foundations for becoming this mighty nation of Israel. But this is the very same stuff that Yahweh turned around and cursed them for in, I think it was Ezekiel 22. We'll get there in a little bit because I want to at least get to the story of Dinah, because that's the part that really got me, to show you how nasty these people are. Yeah, 34. Hold on. I'm trying to see. Yeah, Esau was trying to make peace with Jacob, and they didn't have any conflict after that, but they did meet up again later in life, and it was okay. So it said Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way to Paddan Aram, and he camped before the city. And the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the piece of land on which he had pitched his tent, and he erected an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. So he's definitely, like I said, he is in camp Yahweh all day. El Elohe Israel was the name of the place where he put this altar to Yahweh. Now, chapter 34. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the women of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the land, saw her, he seized her and lay with her and humiliated her. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Give me this girl for my wife." Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with the livestock in the field. So Jacob held his peace until they came. Now I'm not trying to justify what Shechem did, because no means no. But it don't even say that she said no. It's just that he lay with her and then she was humiliated later after the fact. But that's neither here nor there. You forget about how Lot and all of them was going to voluntarily give up their virgin daughters just to appease the men of the city. And that was all right. But we're going to listen to what they do for these people. Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob held his peace until they came. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. The sons of Jacob had come in from the field as soon as they heard of it, and the men were indignant and very angry because he had done an outrageous thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing must not be done. Oh, it's okay when they do it to each other, but anyway, yeah. But Hamor spoke with them and saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him to be his wife. Make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. You shall dwell with us, and the land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it, and get property in it." Shechem also said to her father and to his brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me, I will give. Ask for me as great a bride price and gift as you will, and I will give whatever you say to me. Only give me the young woman to be my wife." So they're choosing to make an exception or make a big thing about the fact that from wherever he was in the land, that they didn't want to associate with these people, which made it so abhorrent that he did this thing to her. But it really doesn't even say that he took her by force. But mind you, before humans ever even came into being, Yahweh essayed his wife. That's how he got his wife. She was Sud, one of the scientists that worked up under Ninmah. They got drunk and he took her by force, even though she protested and said she was a virgin and she didn't want to do it. He took her anyway, and they exiled him. But because she became pregnant, rather than have her give birth to a royal bastard, she agreed to become the first lady, to become his wife, and they let him out of exile because she agreed to marry him. So why is it what they're getting ready to do to this young man's family is absolutely ridiculous. They use it as an excuse to be some nasty, violent people, because Shechem it says he was seriously in love with her and willing to give them any kind of bride price. His family came there. They apologized for him getting out of hand and taking things too far, but they were like, let's make peace amongst our people. Your daughters marry our sons and vice versa. We want to give you property in the land. He's willing to give you any bride price that you name. He loves this girl and he wants to do right by her. And this is their response. The sons of Jacob answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully, because he had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to them, "We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we agree with you, that you will become as we are, by every male among you being circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. But if you would not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and we will be gone." Their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem, and the young man did not delay to do the thing, because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most honored of all his father's house. So it's not a bad kid. They was literally two young folks that got out there and let their lust get hold of them. First of all, Dinah ain't had no business having her little fast tail over there amongst them people, but she went out alone amongst them people and got herself in that situation. And again, I'm not justifying what he did, But according to what the scriptures describe, they don't describe a violent SA. They describe two young people that done did the do and let their hormones get in the way. And now, because she know her family ain't gonna like it, she runs back and she's so humiliated and embarrassed. And her brothers took it way out of pocket just for an excuse to do so, even though all of their daddies and uncles and everything else have done far worse. But they agreed to the circumcision. These grown men agreed to this circumcision as an adult, and it's much more painful if it's done as an adult than if it's done at the eighth day as a baby. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, "These men are at peace with us. Let them dwell in the land and trade in it, for behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men agree to dwell with us to become one people, when every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock, their property, and their beasts be ours? Only let us agree with them, and they will dwell with us." And all who went out of the gate of the city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. On the third day, when they were sore, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and came against the city while it felt secure and killed all the males. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds, their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and in the field, all their wealth and all their little ones and their wives, all that was in the houses, they captured and plundered. This Israel, y'all. Those people were making a peaceful pact with these people. They knew that their son had not necessarily done the right thing, but they were doing their very level best to make it right. He wanted to marry this woman. He wanted to take her into his house. He agreed to pay whatever bride price they wanted. They wanted to make a peaceful pact so that the people could live together in the land, grant them lands to pasture their sheep and everything else, and do honest trade with them. And the Israelites said, "Yes, we agree. We will do this with you, except you got to be circumcised." And while they was all laying up there still recovering from their circumcision, they went in and slaughtered everybody, except they plundered the city, took all of their wealth, and took their women and children. That's wickedness. That is pure wickedness, y'all. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household." But they said, "Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?" He didn't treat her like no prostitute. Anyway, that is just, I'm like, how can they justify that? But again, oh, Levi, the same Levi, well, it was the Levites, because later, this is later on when they were captured in Egypt. But the Levites, this is the beginning of it, bloodthirsty. The Levites are the same ones that decided to take it upon themselves to unalive 3,000 of the nation of Israel, because they had all made Yahweh mad right there at the foot of Mount Sinai. That they literally lied to those people and told them to go get circumcised, and yes, we will accept all of your offers of reconciliation and union, and we'll join our people, and we're going to be at peace and all of that. And then waited till they was down in their sick beds and slaughtered them all, and then took the women and children into captivity. But this is the nature of the ancestors that chose to serve Yahweh and the stuff. And all the while, they still claiming Yahweh as their God. So he's witnessing all of this and ain't doing nothing, ain't made a peep. And within the last 20 chapters, he been quiet as a lamb, or 15 chapters. He ain't saying nothing. He watching them do this wickedness and he down with it. But then later on, let me see. You said the generations of Edom, of Esau, that is Edom. Yeah. I don't have to go through all of that. I do before we leave tonight. I am gonna go over here to Ezekiel because I think it was Ezekiel 22. Yeah. And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, "And you, son of man, will you judge? Will you judge the bloody city? Then declare to her all her abominations. You shall say, thus says the Lord God, a city that sheds blood in her midst, so that her time may come, and that makes idols to defile herself. You have become guilty by the blood that you have shed, and defiled by the idols that you have made, and you have brought your days near. The appointed time of your ears has come. Therefore I have made you a reproach to the nations and a mockery to all the countries. Those who are near and those who are far from you will mock you. Your name is defiled. You are full of tumult. Behold, the princes of Israel in you, every one according to his power, has been bent on shedding blood. Father and mother are treated with contempt in you. The sojourner suffers extortion in your midst. The fatherless and the widow are wronged in you. You have despised my holy things and profaned my Sabbaths. There are men in you who slander to shed blood. And didn't they just do it with the situation with Dinah? Ain't that what they did? They sat right up there and lied and set them people up so that they could unalive a whole tribe of people or take down a whole city on some ultra revenge stuff. And even their daddy said that they was wrong for that because they made their name bad in the land, period. The Perizzites and all the rest of them was sitting there looking at them like they Canaanite. Nobody wanted to be bothered with them. Hey, Nina King, welcome. There are men in you who slander to shed blood, and people in you who eat on the mountains. They commit lewdness in your midst. In you, men uncover their father's nakedness. In you, they violate women who are unclean in their menstrual impurity. One commits abomination with his wife's neighbor. Another lewdly defiles his daughter-in-law. Another in you violates his sister, his father's daughter. So all the stuff, and again, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Laban, Lot, the whole cast of them that showed up in all of Genesis did every single one of these things. They were sitting over there choosing to marry very closely into their family. They were having incestuous marriages. They were violating each other and creating all kind of abominations and sitting there lying to people in their neighborhoods and all of that to take unfair advantage. The works. In you, they take bribes to shed blood. You take interest in profit and make gain of your neighbors by extortion. But me you have forgotten, declares the Lord God. Behold, I strike my hand at the dishonest gain that you have made, and at the blood that has been in your midst. Can your courage endure, or can your hands be strong in the days that I shall deal with you? I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will do it. I will scatter you among the nations and disperse you through the countries, and I will consume your uncleanness out of you. And you shall be profaned by your own doing in the sight of the nations, and you shall know that I am the Lord. And the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, the house of Israel has become dross to me. All of them are bronze and tin and iron and lead in the furnace. They are dross of silver. Now, silver, they use it as money and stuff, but silver has never had an inordinate amount of value. So they ain't even valuable as silver. They are the dross off of refining silver. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, because you have become dross, therefore, behold, I will gather you into the midst of Jerusalem as one gathers silver and bronze and iron and lead and tin into a furnace to blow the fire on it in order to melt it. So I will gather you in my anger and in my wrath, and I will put you in and melt you. I will gather you and blow on you with the fire of my wrath, and you shall be melted in the midst of it. As silver is melted into a furnace, so shall you be melted in the midst of it, and you shall know that I am the Lord. I have poured out my wrath upon you. Yeah. And the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, say to her, you are a hand that is not cleansed or rained upon in a day of indignation. The conspiracy of her prophets in her midst is like a roaring lion tearing the prey. They have devoured human lives. They have taken treasure and precious things. They have made many widows in her midst. Her priests have done violence to my law and have profaned my holy things. They have made no distinction between the holy and the common, neither have they taught the difference between the unclean and the clean, and they have disregarded my Sabbaths, so that I am profaned among them. Her princes in her midst are like wolves tearing the prey, shedding blood, destroying lives to get dishonest gain. And her prophets have smeared whitewash for them, seeing false vision and divining lies for them, saying, thus says the Lord God, when the Lord has not spoken. Uh-oh. Let me see. The people of the land have practiced extortion and committed robbery. They have oppressed the poor and needy and have extorted from the sojourner without justice. And I sought for a man among them who would build up the wall and stand in the breach before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. Therefore I have poured out my indignation upon them. I have consumed them with the fire of my wrath. I have returned their way upon their heads, declares the Lord God. You see, there's so much people don't know. I'm not getting into that tonight, Bugatti. Y'all have to see that later, because I don't know where there's three Yeshuas in the Bible. The one that I'm concerned with is the one that was with Lord Enki. So I'm not. I mean, Jesus, I get that part. That's Yahweh. That's Yahweh. But that's way too confusing for folks that are literally just trying to get a basic grasp of the scriptures. I'm not gonna go there. Not right now. But yeah, the part that I'm getting at though, later on, Paul likens the Christian congregation. Like I said, they go, "Oh, well, this is the Old Testament. We don't have to, the scriptures. Yeshua's death supposedly fulfill the law, and we're gonna move into the New Testament now." Well, Paul likened them to the Israel of God, but in Ezekiel, it's showing where God then told them that their God, the Israelites' God, Yahweh, told them that he was sick to death of them for all of the nastiness that they was doing, and every single bit of it has spilled over into the Christian congregation as well, especially this part where it's talking about how they have profaned the holy. They make no distinction between the holy and the common. Look at all of the religious holidays. Jeremiah told them, do not be doing as the nations are doing, cutting down trees and adorning them with silver. And yet the biggest holiday they got that supposedly reps the birth of the Christ child features the trees, ornaments with the gold and the tinsel and all the rest of that, just as the scriptures told them not to do. So they have made no distinction between the holy and the common, neither have they taught the difference between the unclean and the clean. In fact, in the New Testament, supposedly the Christian congregation has said you don't need to keep the law. You don't even really need to keep the Sabbath. You can eat anything you want and you can do whatever you want. As long as you call on the name of the Lord, then you are saved, and that's that. You ain't even got to do good the rest of your life. All you got to do before you die on your deathbed, declare yourself saved and repent, and there you go. That's what Christianity teaches today. When Yeshua said it was he that endures to the end that will be saved. But Christianity tell you all you got to do is call on the name of the Lord and you good. Everything is just hunky dory, and that's why they can get away with running into wars and dealing with things subjects like uh, actual African and SA and DV and like I said, all of the stuff that they do, and still put in God they trust all over everything because that. But the God that they're worshiping, Jehovah, told the Israelites way back here 3,000 years ago that he was sick of them and the stuff that they was doing, even though he was doing the same thing too. But they took it to a whole level, and he was like, no, enough. And the other part that really gets me with Christians, if nothing else, the thing that proves that Christians today do not have the blessing of God, it says right here, neither have they taught the difference between the unclean and the clean, and they have disregarded my Sabbaths, so that I am profaned among them. Paul excused Christians from keeping the Sabbath. Yahweh never did. In fact, Yahweh told them that they were to observe Passover forever. In fact, even though Yeshua was not a Yahweh worshiping Jew, the very last thing he did before they hung him up was the Passover meal, because that symbolized the entire nation of Israel being delivered out of Egypt by Yahweh. And that's the one thing that he did actually do. And he told them that they were to observe Passover forever. And Paul turned around and told them, nope, you ain't got to do that. So by default, there's not one Christian alive today. If they practice Christianity, the one thing you can count on if they practice Christianity is that they are not in Yahweh Jehovah's favor, because he's a very exacting and demanding God by his own say so right here in this book. And Christians do not keep the Sabbath because Shabbat was Saturday. They don't keep the lunar calendar. We're on a Greco-Roman calendar practicing a Sunday Sabbath with an adulterated religion full of pagan holidays that do everything under the sun except what Yahweh told the nation of Israel to do. They declare themselves to be the Israel of God in name only, but in fact, they turn around and bow to Emperor Constantine's demands. They serve the Holy Roman Empire instead of serving Jehovah. Yeah. But I'm saying they're calling on Yahweh, but they're not obeying what Yahweh told them to do, and yet they still think they have favor. That's the part. Because Yahweh ain't told none of them that they was excused from keeping the Sabbath. And yet Christians don't hardly keep any Sabbaths. Occasionally, some of them will claim they're going to keep Sabbath on Sunday, but who gave them the right to move Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday? Nero did that. Emperor Nero decided that. But Yahweh didn't tell them to do that. But following behind the apostate Paul and Constantine and Nero, they set themselves on a trajectory. If there was a such thing as a burning hell, every Christian on this planet will be headed for it, because Yahweh said, no, you better worship me in truth. You got to deal with me. I'm an exacting God. I'm a jealous God. And you better keep my laws and my commandments. And Paul dismissed it and told him no. And I don't even understand how Christians feel like that they can't, because even if they want to try to claim that Yeshua's execution removed the obligation for us to keep the Mosaic law, nobody could remove the requirement of keeping the Ten Commandments, because the Ten Commandments were written by the hand of Yahweh himself. And so much so that they was literally nailed to the tree that Yeshua was executed on. A copy of the Ten Commandments was nailed to it, according to the scriptures. And in that Ten Commandments, it says, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. But part of it is in there somewhere, is thou shalt keep my holy days unto me. Where do Christians keep a weekly Sabbath? They don't, because they moved it to Sunday. Where do they keep their monthly Sabbath? They don't, because most Christians don't even know that there was more than just the weekly Sabbath. There was weekly Sabbaths, monthly Sabbaths, an annual Sabbath, and every 50th year was a jubilee, a whole Sabbath year. Most Christians don't know nothing about that, and certainly ain't making no effort to keep it. I mean, and the Jews ain't either at this point. They don't keep no Jubilee year in its entirety, because we live in a world, other than that thing that happened back in 2020, ain't nobody shutting down a whole year and just sitting around in a Sabbath. But that was Yahweh's instructions to the nation of Israel. And he never told them to stop doing that. So the fact that they choose to do something different, yeah, Lioness Agaya, that was one of the reasons why people don't understand that whole, they put this Good Friday and Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and then Easter Sunday, that story together to make people think it would have had to have been on a Friday to a Sunday, even though that's not 3 days. But the truth of the matter is, it was more likely a Wednesday to Friday scenario, because it would have been a Sabbath. I think it was a high Sabbath, like a monthly or annual Sabbath that they were keeping, and they had to get him in the ground, or get him basically off the stake and in the ground before Shabbat, which was Saturday. But Christianity has us celebrating that whole ritual from the Friday to the Sunday, and it would not have been. Yeah. But yeah, and it just amazes me. I mean, even to this day, like I said, Israel declares himself so holy and the chosen one of God, even though, let's be real, the Ashkenazi Jews are not the biblical Jews. Everybody knows it. But for some reason, people don't seem to be able to say nothing about it. That's supposed to be taboo and off the area. Can't nobody say nothing since that little thing that happened last century or whatever. But I'm like, no, because no. Yeah, but whoever they are and whatever they are, even like I said, because the same thing would, I'd be having the same conversation with the Hebrew Israelites over here. Fact of the matter, the Hebrew Israelites in America are even worse, because my biggest question, if I get an opportunity to talk to them little purple shirt people to be running around screaming at people, how in the world you gonna claim to be an Israelite and using a Christian Bible to defend your faith with? That's blasphemous. If you an Israelite, why ain't you got your Torah and your Talmud with you? But they stand on the street corner spewing the Bible at people as if they doing something. That's just dumb. But you call yourself a Hebrew Israelite. But most of them you talk to, their little 3 little brain cells be rattling around in their head like a baby in a boxcar. They are so indoctrinated in that foolishness, you can't really talk to them. And the Ethiopian Jews over in Africa ain't really no better, because they still running around with their little blue and white prayer cloths and holding on to ancient scraps of papyrus and stone tablets and stuff, and sitting with a box that's literally killing all their priests from radioactivity, like they really doing something. They've missed the entire point of all of the scriptures, because they done, like I said, they caught in that 3D religiosity. They are so indoctrinated into Yahweh worship that they will blindly follow that monster anywhere he chooses to lead them, without question. And of course, the Muslims and the Christians ain't no better. So I can say I'm not against or for or against any one or the other more than the other. Any of them that are following Yahweh, El, Allah, Jehovah, whatever you choose to call him, they the blind leading the blind, and all of them lost. We have been lied to long enough, and it's time for us to learn the truth and come up out of it. Well, that's about enough of that for tonight. Did anybody have any questions or anything that we want to talk about before I go? Nope. All right then. Oh, it's 144 minutes. I'm not gonna get out here at 144:44. I kind of wish we could. Oh, it's gonna be a bunch of different parts. Cause like I said, I gotta start uploading some of this stuff, but I was just kind of reading for my own personal benefit, and I am gonna start uploading it. I keep saying that and getting off into other stuff, but we're going to just kind of start roaming our way through. I'm not going to try to read the entire Bible chapter and every chapter and verse, but I will go through and, look 10 or 12, whatever chapters ahead and kind of summarize and then read parts of it as are relevant as we go through. But yeah, we're going to get through. Let me see how many chapters are in Genesis. Hold up. Joseph's dreams 40. The brothers go to Egypt. Oh yeah. Next time we come in here, we'll be talking about when Joseph went to Egypt, and then because that's kind of jacked up too. They literally tried to kill Joseph. He was the baby boy, and they tried to kill him, and instead he wound up an official in Pharaoh's house. So when the famine came in the land, the same brothers that tried to drop him down a well had to bow at his feet for him to take care of him, and he did. But yeah, there are 50 chapters, and like I said, we're right around chapter 40 right now. So I'll take a look at that next time, and we'll finish up that, and then get into Exodus, because that's where we really start getting into the thick of how and why we still serving him to this day, and some of that stuff. I want to get, well, Exodus isn't even that long. Well, it is, but it isn't. It's about 30 or 40 chapters as well. I think it's in Leviticus. Wait a minute. Yeah, it's 40 chapters in Exodus. Leviticus is when they start getting into, no, that's what does Passover. I was trying to see where the Mosaic law, I think it may be Deuteronomy where the Mosaic law is reiterated. But like I said, we'll start going through it. So we'll finish up Genesis next time, and then we'll do Exodus the following. Yep. You said this was other good night? Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Exodus is powerful. Yep, we'll get into it later, y'all. But thank you for joining me again. I will be on TikTok tomorrow. I think I promised them 3 o'clock tomorrow. Like I said, I'm in the process of moving a lot of the different live stream times around. But if anybody's interested in tarot, I will be over there tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, and then hopefully back here on Thursday evening. I may even make Thursdays a little bit earlier. Like I said, I got to really sit down and figure the schedule out, but hopefully Thursday. Until then, peace and blessings to you, soul family. Be good. I love you. Until next time, namaste.